My door is always going to be open. All right, you can ask me anything. No topic will be into touch.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Machtails from the Cantina Live, episode number 55, the Ted Lasso Love Fest. Fuck! Joining us on tonight's episode will be producer Brian Klein. Rich Brendle will be here for more than just a cheer and a beer. Fuck! And football fanatic David Gladding also joins the show. Love is in the air, so grab yourself a pint or a cup of tea.
I always figured that tea was just going to taste like hot brown water. And you know what? I was right.
Join us on the pitch.
Hey, look, this car's got an invisible steering wheel.
I am your coach, Cris Macht. Producer Matthew Rooney is my assistant coach. And it's time to let the game begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Machtails from the Cantina Live, episode number 55. Spoiler alert, this is our Ted Lasso special. I know I'm super fucking late to the party. Like, what is Cris Macht's overnight obsession with the Ted Lasso show? Well, we will get into that with some really, really special guests and some friends. Thank you to the producers that are making this show happen. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters from the $2 tier all the way up to the $11.38 tier, and of course higher, making you a producer. I could not do this without you guys. So it might be time now, if you're not a Patreon supporter, cough up the $2. I hate to say it that way. It's a little bit of my Roy Kent attitude shining through tonight. Why buy the Bantha when you get the blue milk for free, such as this show? Because there's so much more than just this live show. My Patreon supporters know it, and we got an hour to get through a lot of material. So, again, if you are a Ted Lasso fanatic, you're in the right spot. But if not, save yourself a lot of spoilers. Tune in at another time. So much to get to. So much fucking to get to. By the way, the drinking word of the night is Roy. I was going to just have the word fuck, but, I figured I'd have it a little classy. I'll let my mouth do the talking. Every time you hear the word Roy, as in Roy Kent, drink along with us, but only if you're 21 and over. Drink responsibly. For those of you that are looking for some more underage content, I would recommend you check out Brother Jimmy and Jason's Rebel Force Radio for some more family fun. But if you want the dysfunction, you guys know you're in the right place. I am going to bring everybody on, and I don't want to trip over anybody's dick here, so I'm going to bring everybody on, and I'll let Matthew Rooney behind the board take it from there. But welcome, guys, to the show. I need to just let you guys know, let the audience know, Dave, you're not only a Patreon supporter, but you are from the UK. I know that you are a football fan, as in the Americans call it soccer, I know. So I had to have you on the show. Rich, you're the one that just turned me on to this show. And, of course, Brother Brian Klein loves a lot of things, has a lot of knowledge. So I figured, you know what, this foursome here would make for a good cocktail to talk about this show. I want to start.
Hey, I do want to interject one thing though. At the beginning of your little this is going to be my, comic book guy moment when you said let the games begin. It's a match,
The match. I know I fucked that up. I consulted David on how to use the word pitch. But,
pitch, match, kits. It's all different than jerseys, games, field, and stuff like that. So trust me.
Yeah, the match. Let the match begin. No, I appreciate you calling me. That's why I have you on the episode tonight, because you are the man with the facts. You're a little bit like Roy Kent yourself. You are everywhere.
Fuck off.
Boy, wanker.
You have a lot of different A lot of different shows, man. I want to plug them at the top of the hour here. Where can people check you out? You got source pages. You got something going on with brother Suds, producer Suds.
If you go to source pages on anything, any of the podcast streams, you'll get our main show, which is source pages, which deals with comics and novels based on like with primers and other stuff. But then we also have our Star Wars and Doctor Who show and stuff. It's all in the same feed. We only have one feed. You don't have to subscribe.
Only one feed. It's all in one.
Yep.
That's good to know. So guys, check that out for sure.
Thank you.
And Brian, I love it because every time I talk to you, you are like this walking encyclopedia. So I know you have some facts that will help us out. David, I'm looking forward to hearing from you from your fan side of it. And Rich, of course, you are in the line of how do I say this? Counseling, right?
Oh, yeah. Mental health therapist, yeah.
And there is a big part of the mental health element in this show.
Big
I
time.
Off by everybody how they were introduced to this show. I was introduced to this show from Brother Rich, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'll watch it. Three seasons. You know, I'm behind. This came out in 2020. I was not super familiar with Jason Sudeikis, and I think that is what saved me here. Because my brother, SNL fanatic, he said, you know, he was not a fan of Sudeikis as this character. I had no idea. I didn't really have a lot of information about Sudeikis except that he was a comedian. I recently found out that he spent a lot of time in Chicago, with the comedy sports troupe. But going into this blindly was, I think, even more of a positive wallop, a slap on the face, if you will. Just, wow, this show is fucking good. And then I realized that everybody loves the show, especially because it won so many awards. I'm not alone in this department, but I just got done watching it like last week. I was blown away. I wanted to watch it again as soon as it ended. I will do that sooner than later for sure. Let's go around the horn. Dave, how were you introduced to this show at first? And your love of...
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but he actually started off as like a promotional character in commercials for when I think NBC got the rights to the English Premier League a few years ago. So he actually started off in the kind of funny few commercials, like acting like a kind of American who didn't know much about like football/soccer, So that was when I first had seen him, and those commercials were hilarious. And then when I saw the trailers coming out for the TV show, I was like, oh, this looks fantastic. So I watched it as soon as it came out. I was there ready, kind of opening night, so to speak, to watch it on the TV.
Do you think because you are a football fan that this show was automatically appealing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely what had the initial hook for it. And when I started watching it, I watched the first couple of episodes. I just watched it by myself. But then I turned to my wife. I said, you probably want to watch this too, because even though it's about like soccer, there's a lot more to it. That's just kind of part of the side story. It's all about the characters and how they develop and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I initially got into it. Then my wife started watching it with me as well after I'd watched a few episodes.
Brian, how about you? How were you introduced to this show?
Well, before you do it, Dave, I got to ask you, what's your Premier League club?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so it's actually my team I'm actually follow Ipswich, which is in the Championship. Okay. We were in the Premier League like a long time ago. I think the last time was like 2002. Okay. So we're currently kind of on our way back, hopefully, to get back in the Premier League.
I was going to say, well, mine is Chelsea, and hopefully they don't end up getting relegated. They've been playing from a team that's won the cup, won it recently. They just have been terrible the last couple of years.
Yeah, I would say Arsenal would be my team if I had to pick somebody, just because my like grandmother is from the area in North London, and she went there years ago. So that's kind of my second favorite team, and they're doing pretty well this season.
Okay.
Well, the crazy thing, Brian, I hate to cut you off, but I want to add to the question that you asked David. David, I know you and I were doing an 1138 chat a week ago, happy hour chat that you can get on Patreon, by the way. And shameless plug. But I have to say, you were the one that told me that all these teams are real. They all exist.
Yeah. So apart from obviously like Richmond, all the other teams you see in the show are all based on real teams.
Yeah, crazy. Oh,
yeah.
Brian,
They've got
you're obviously a football fan.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, I started watching this. I got in a little bit late too. It was last year. We were watching this. So my now wife Liz, who was my fiance at the time, started watching this, and we also started watching because of my older brother Jamie. Welcome to Wrexham, which is a Hulu documentary about the Wrexham Football Club, who was bought by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and has brought them back up, And so you're watching a real show about football, and then the Ted Lasso. So that helped actually a lot with Liz getting into both the shows. Me, I've been, I played soccer as a kid, and I've been following the Premier League for a long time now. Like I said, my club is Chelsea, and they've been up and down. And as long as I would say, as long as it's not one of the Manchester teams, but they seem to be winning it a lot lately. So
yeah, maybe Arsenal Liverpool this year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the same as going to be like with when Leicester won it a few years ago, and they got relegated this past season, didn't they? They're down in they're in League Two now.
The Championship.
Oh, Championship League. That's right. So, but yeah, I mean, I would say if you like this, I would actually go to check out the Welcome to Wrexham, because it follows this team that used to be their stadium is the oldest. It's the oldest. The race course is still the oldest.
It's the oldest international stadium, I think, or something like that,
in the world. And it's it's gone through. Just watch the show, and it shows you how heartbreaking it's gone from them being used as like almost like a tax write-off as a club to being. Not to spoil anything, it was kind of hard though last year watching the season beforehand, watching the club knowing that they won the league, and then you watch season 2 while that's building up to them winning the league. So you sort of know what's happening. But this show is so much more. I mean, the football aspect of it is probably maybe 30 to 35% of the show. The rest of it is, I've never seen a show in 3 seasons with so much character development from multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those 3 guys, right? Well, maybe not Coach Beard as much. I mean, he pretty much ends up being the same guys he came in, but between Ted and Nate, it's like.
Yeah, but we follow him on some fun adventures.
Oh, that standalone episode of his when he was just wandering the streets, like that was one of the best episodes, man.
Well, before I ask Rich how he got introduced to this, because he was the one that introduced me to this, Brian, I do want to tell you or add to what you said there. Every episode that I watched, I said out loud to myself, I said, God damn, the fucking character development is off the charts. Mm-hmm. And I think what it is, too, is it's not just 2 or 3 characters. It is several characters. And to kind of defend the fact that this is not a football show, I really enjoyed watching this, because as a baseball fanatic, and there's several baseball references throughout, well, not several, but there's a handful of baseball references throughout. That was another thing that kind of grabbed my attention too. It really shows you that these athletes are human. Like the Cubs World Series championship team, those guys are human. The people that get eliminated from the playoffs early, they're human. And I feel like this show really showed that, you can be a badass football player, badass athlete, but you still have a real life element around you. Like the fans were booing them, and some of them are struggling. It really was. That's another thing. Character development and super fucking real, especially between these 2 guys. I mean, this relationship here was.
Jamie Tart, I mean, talk about there's guys. Jamie Tart went from being a guy you completely hated at the beginning to where you felt sympathetic for him. And then Nate Shelley is a guy that you were like, okay. And then at some point, everyone had to have just fucking hated that guy. When you could tell that you realize he's being completely used for the reason that, we could talk about later. But it's just, oh my God, it's just, I mean, Roy Kent does grow during the show, but he still is pretty much like the same, curmudgeon-y old fuck who loves his niece. And But yeah, I mean, it's
fun fact. Like, I don't know if you know, like Roy Kent is kind of loosely based on a real football player from the kind of 90s called Roy Keane.
Yeah,
He was like
I was reading that. Yes, I was reading all because I'm like, where the fuck did this story come from? And listening to a lot of the interviews on YouTube and this sort of other doing a little research on myself. I haven't because the show ended. I'm like, okay, I want more, so I'm gonna go watch the interviews. And it seemed like the magic that they caught in a bottle was they surrounded themselves with great actors, with great chemistry, great writers, great producers. And Jason Sudeikis was saying that he took so many different elements from so many different things that he loved and kind of threw them into a blender. And this is how we got Ted Lasso. And you can totally see that. Rich, how were you introduced to this show, and how long ago was it?
It was a few years ago. I think it was. I started watching it when season 2 was happening. I started binging season 1. I remember hearing on Rebel Force Radio did some clip from it or something, and I'm like, all right, it mentions Star Wars. I gotta watch it now.
Right.
I wanted to watch it so much for a while before that. Because I mean, this show came out, I think, when the world needed it the most. It's so positive, and when the world was going to hell in a handbasket during the pandemic, and everybody was hating everybody and stuff.
Yeah, and
there was this element of positivity that it gave people hope. Yeah. So
it's funny because I heard about the show. I kind of thought it was comedy because I knew a little bit about Sudeikis. I knew he was on SNL. It was on Apple. I didn't have Apple, so I found another. I have it. Make a long story short, I have something on my Fire Stick that gives me access to everything that's out there now. And you had told me it's a feel-good show. And I watched it. I fucking cried every goddamn episode.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is not. It's a feel-good show, but I would say it's not a campy, cheesy, feel-good kind of show. It is something that
even that character of Roy Kent, even though he's like the Grouch, he's the Grouch with the heart of gold. All right. Even in the scene, like the karaoke scene, when the boss was singing Let It Go, he was like, if you watch that scene, he's there mouthing the words to the song. Wow. I mean, he's the Grouch that loves stuff like Frozen and Princess Diaries and stuff.
Well, there's so many different things grabbed my attention. I love Frozen simply because it was something that me and my daughter was a big Frozen fan, still is, but every time I hear that song, I think of my daughter, think about taking Danny to see Frozen 2 right before everything shut down in 2020.
Yeah.
One of those things where every little thing, every little reference was like, oh my God, it just drew me in more and more. We saw that Believe sign. I want to share something with you guys because going back to baseball, going back to athletes, the 2011 Rays, they started off in last place. They lost like the first 13 games. And I have this from a Rays magazine that came out, and I was always attached to this since 2011. So again, that fucking sign, I'm like, God damn it, man, it's Joe Madden right there. So little things that added up to just, wow, this show is completely amazing. Going back to Roy Kent as well, he was the one, too, that really defended Nate in the beginning because people, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate was being bullied.
He was bullied by the footballers, yeah.
Yeah, and Roy was the one that was like, it was to Jamie actually. It was to Jamie. He's like, don't fucking say.
Yeah, and Jamie had all of his little cronies that were following him because he was the guy
right.
He was the guy that was on loan from who was it? Was it Man U or Man City? That
Yeah, Man
scene
City
though,
are big, yeah.
that still scene when they pulled the loan from Man City and Ted's like, they took his house. Like he doesn't understand the whole process of how they do when they pull the loans back and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, when you think about Roy Kent, I mean the bicycle scene with learning.
Oh, perfect.
Oh my God, it's just that whole.
I can't ride a bike.
Yeah, not only that, and it pops up a lot on my reels, but the be curious, not judgmental thing is seriously everyone in the world should see that. And it's just not even like the aspect of him going after Rupert and showing him that, you know, you challenged me this whole thing with the game of darts, but it's the whole premise of taking something for face value instead of learning more about it.
Exactly. I've shown that in therapy a few times, that whole scene. And I mean, I love it because it's like, it shows also that Ted, he was kind of a misfit. He didn't quite fit in, you know, and he was bullied. And
I think the thing about this show,
too, who he was.
The thing about this show is it was very Sesame Street-esque to me. You know, and with the ladies in the show, we know
that boss.
We see the powerful women, but we see their soft side. We see how they struggle. We see their sexy side as well. I feel like the show dealt with so many different elements, relationships, the LGBTQ community coming out. I know that's a big thing in sports. People being bullied. There were so many things that were handled in such a Sesame Street fashion as opposed to, agenda driven, I guess. It showed that all these fucking people are human and they all have thoughts and feelings.
They kept it simple instead of being like overhanded or being beaten down with it. It was just like, it was part of it wasn't preachy. It was just part of the everyday, like the thing when Trent saw the one player that was, you know, in the gay bar, it just sort of just like, you know, you could sort of see, because even at that time, Trent was sort of kind of sus, but then you realize, I thought, I'm like, oh my God, he's gay. But they don't beat you over the head with it, but they use it to help the situation, and especially because the foot being, like you said, it's a macho thing, you can't come out, and it proved that it's just like you said earlier, these are just regular people dealing with everyday situations, but on a bigger spotlight as, you know, professional athletes, and you get to see this. So a lot of times when you sit there, I mean, I think one of the things that sort of would help with this show is like when you get people yelling at professional athletes because they dropped the ball and they lost their fantasy football game because of this, or they lost a championship. Like the kicker from Moody from the 49ers was getting a bunch of hate because he missed the extra point, which caused the game to not be, you know, I mean, I think if they would have been down by 4 instead of 3, Kansas City probably would have won it in regulation with the way they were driving. They wouldn't have settled for the field goal. They would have just scored the touchdown. But instead now it's his fault that it went to overtime and they lost the 49ers, which it's not. He's human, just, you know, relax.
Dave, I want to ask you, as a fan, how do you feel like football fans were captured in the show? Do you feel like that's a positive, not a positive, an accurate betrayal on, and of course we'll focus on the 3 guys at the pub.
I love those guys.
Yeah, they didn't delve into the whole hooliganism thing, which is fine because that's sort of like the black eye of. They do that in Welcome to Wrexham. But hooliganism. I mean, you've seen stuff like that where they just go.
I lived through that as a kid. Yeah, when I used to go in the 80s, you'd see like in England, it's like the fans, the away fans and the home fans are still kept separate, right? So they have like a special area of the ground for like the traveling fans go up in it. And I'd see like fights and people like going into the home areas of the crowd, like beating the shit out of each other and stuff. So that was some pretty rough
and the
time.
thing you
so
also
much
have,
better now,
you have to realize something about that too. And I'm telling the group, like all the listeners, I mean, Dave knows this, is that the whole thing with football over there is it's so It's not like here in America where you've got Chicago and Milwaukee. I mean, there's some London. How many professional teams does London have? I mean, it's
at least 10, 15 probably. Yeah.
Oh my word.
And there's some like in Manchester, it's like your one side of the street is red, one side of the street's blue. It's like you're either city, you're either you, and you're in close proximity. So you think that the hate between the Cubs and the Sox is bad. This is like that times 10 with more other factors being involved, and it gets like increasingly violent. And there's
somebody in the chat is talking about they're a Celtic fan, right? I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but like in Scotland, like Celtic fans are traditionally Catholic, Rangers are like Protestant, and there's like in so many troubles down the years because of that kind of religious aspect, kind of along with their football fandom as well. There's kind of other examples of that, where it kind of bleeds into everyday life as well, not just the game on a Saturday.
And people think Star Wars fans are fucking crazy.
But I'm sort of glad they didn't bring that aspect into the show, because that's a whole different that would pull away from making it too macro when they were keeping it micro.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Dave, do you feel like they should have showed a little bit more of the intensity of the fans, or do you think they did a good job?
Actually, pretty well. Yeah, I think thankfully, like English football has really moved on past hooliganism now. There's still kind of isolated incidents, just like anywhere, but overall, I used to. You should feel safe going to a game over there now. A lot of that has kind of been weeded out, thankfully. My only comment about those three guys in the pub, which I absolutely loved as well, but I'm like, they watch every fucking game from the pub, but at least go to the game and watch it live, So
I mean, especially because they're sitting there talking, the Coach Lasso and Coach Beard, they're having
exactly.
It's like it'd be like, hey, can you get us even some like standing room seats in the back of the stadium or something? Like,
well, eventually they made it to the practices, though.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, maybe I feel like I want to drink the beers that are 20 pounds at the game.
Yeah, probably that's probably it. Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not a cheap sport anymore. I mean, especially in the Premier League, you're looking at, I don't know what the prices are now. Probably at least £100 per game, and all the concessions and drinks and stuff. Yeah, it's definitely gone up in price since I used to go a long time ago.
Holy shit!
I didn't even realize
this, but Ted Lasso was created and produced by Bill Lawrence, who, he did Scrubs, which is one of my favorite Scrubs, Spin City. Holy, I did not even realize that. My God.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And he's also doing this Shrinking.
Shrinking is amazing.
Harrison Ford, yeah.
Yeah, and he's doing that with Roy Kent, Brett Goldstein. They're doing it together. But I got to tell you, I had such a hangover from this amazing show. I was looking for the next big thing, and Rich is like, "Hey, check out Shrinking," and I'm like, "Man, it's got the same fucking." People behind it, but it doesn't have
because the first episode of that is so heavy because the daughter and Jason Segel's character just being like completely, I wouldn't say off the rails. He's just like, okay, whatever.
He breaks so many counseling rules. It's not even funny.
Yeah, but Harrison Ford's great in it too for being on television, because I think that's his first television role. So.
Yeah, no, he's good in that. I definitely recommend that. Hey, Rich, you said the C word, counseling. This is a show, Ted Lasso is a show where somebody can kill a dog, and you're like, okay, there's got to be more. I can't believe that they broke the cardinal sin and killed a fucking dog. Okay, what's going to happen next? Usually I'm like, fuck this show. I turn it off. I don't want to have anything to do with somebody that's going to kill dog. But help me out, the footballer. I forget the guy, the Mexican
Danny Rojas.
Rojas.
Oh, hey, come on. You're making it sound like it was like a John Wick style of dog killing. It was completely accidental.
It was a complete accident. But
yeah, there was repercussions though from it though. It completely fucked with Danny Rojas's head.
It was the butterfly effect of this show, because if that would have never happened, the counselor would have never came in. And God bless Matthew Rooney behind the board there. He's never watched Ted Lasso. He doesn't know who all these characters are. But the therapist is the black woman. If we can see her,
Dr. Sharon.
Yeah, Sharon. Awesome fucking job. And
oh God.
So because the dog had died, this girl came in and changed everything. And again, she's human too. They had shown the fact that the counselor is like, you know what? I need somebody to fucking talk to. Rich, how important do you think bringing in her and her counseling to the show was? And what does that tell us about the mental health element of this show?
Night and day. I mean, the mental health aspect of it, the fact that Ted was having like these panic attacks and stuff, and that like linked to his father committing suicide, and you know that scene where he breaks down is like he was a good father even though he committed suicide and stuff like that. And eventually that brought him to the end point of the entire show where he's like, I miss my son, and goes back. There's so many.
Yeah, he was fulfilling the relationship that he had with his son because he did not have that with his own father.
Yeah.
You know,
there's so many mental health aspects of it from.
I feel like I feel like my eyes are getting watery just talking about that, because the fact that his dad died, we knew that kind of early. And I'm like, okay, I can relate to this. This is a character that's lost his dad when he was young. He was like 10 years old, around there. And then I find out, after I fall in love with Ted Lasso, the character, I found out that his dad commits suicide. And I'm like, fucking hell, this is like, this is talking directly to me.
You're getting therapy by just watching the show, by the sound of it.
Yeah.
I feel like watching the show was therapeutic, and it was just a good emotional release.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, Rich, speaking of therapy, what did you think of Ted's ex dating their marriage counselor?
Oh, so wrong.
Totally off limits.
God,
totally against like the ACA, American Counseling Association Code of Ethics. 100%. He would have had to wait. I think it's 2 years after counseling ends before any kind of romantic relationship would start. But going along the counseling line too, you can't not bring up like one of the final episodes, like in one of the most amazing scenes, which was the thank you and fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was like, I can't watch that without tearing up.
Do you know how I want to tell my mom?
Yes.
I thanked my mom before, but I want to say fuck you to my mom for so many things, for so many reasons. And the thing is, we are live, by the way.
Yeah. My mom's never going to watch this, so I resonated with that.
There's so many elements of this fucking show that just spoke to me so personally. David, anything from this show speak to you personally aside from being a football fan?
Yeah, definitely. That for me, it's like, because growing up, like the town I grew up, like Ipswich, I used to have season tickets and go every week with my friends and stuff like that. And just the way the fan community and how like the local town really rallies around the club. You know, being a kind of like a British person in America now, I don't have that attachment. I mean, I live outside of Tampa, but I've got no attachment to the Tampa sports teams because I'm kind of new here. So I kind of miss that kind of community and camaraderie. Like, you know, like those three guys, like on a Saturday would go down the pub and have some beers, then go to the match, you know, and have a good time, then go out afterwards. I thought they did a really good job of kind of showing the fans in a good light, especially because like in England sometimes as well, football used to be like when Margaret Thatcher was like the prime minister, you know, like she was almost like trying to wipe football out because of a lot of the hooligan problems and stuff. So it's so good now to see how like the game has really kind of advanced. And like even when I moved here, like in 2002, you couldn't really see English like football games on TV here. You had to like stream it via some weird stream, or there might be the odd game or you'd pay pay-per-view. But now you think like pretty much all the Premier League games, even like my team, Ipswich, they're on ESPN Plus all the time. You know, you've got the Champions League that you're kind of saturated. You can kind of see it wherever. So it's been really interesting for me to see how the popularity of kind of soccer has grown in America from like a kind of weird, kind of obscure game where it's kind of almost becoming mainstream now, especially like people like Messi coming over here and really. It was kind of, I guess it was Beckham initially to kind of help.
I think Beckham did back. It was okay. So being here back in the 80s, there was in Chicago, especially. I mean, I think you remember this, Chris, if you're around like the Chicago Sting with Karl-Heinz Granitza. It was a major indoor soccer league, was gigantic. And I played soccer growing up by playing hockey and stuff like that. But I think the main point about soccer in America, where they have the problem, is the fact is that each half is just straight through. You don't have commercial breaks. That's the big thing with football. And there's always time for, I mean, think about it. You're watching American football, like the NFL. If a guy goes down for an injury, they're like, all right, we're going to commercial quick because they want that 30-second ad revenue. In watching football, it's like, or soccer, it's the first half starts. There's no stopping until after the end of the first half when you've got the bonus time and stuff. And then boom, then you have to have the commentary on it. So there's not a lot of, I think for them, it's just a matter of being like, it's just constant. But for me, that's the best part is like, you're always watching. Something's always on. Even if you have it in the background, it's just like the game is, or the match is always being played. And you can't just always turn around because next thing you know, you can go from a 2-0 lead to being down 3-2 in like 2 minutes.
That's funny you say it, Brian. I remember, like, as a teenager watching the Super Bowl on the BBC in England, I'd like stay up until it was on at midnight or whatever. And I'd watch it and stay up really late. And because it was on the BBC doesn't have commercials, right? So it was so funny because they're having to fill all this dead air because there'd be a play in the Super Bowl, then it would go to commercial in America, and they're having to talk about something. And it felt like it was like half the time it was just like the announcers like having some side conversation trying to fill in the gaps between plays. There's like really funny experience watching it in England. Yeah.
I got to connect the T's and dot the I's here real quick. Brother Brad Riverdale tuned in. He's tuning in. His wife worked with Rebecca when she was up and coming. She works at Walgreens. Brad's wife does. And she did a Walgreens commercial. This again, this was another relationship that they showed in the show, Sam with Rebecca, where you're like, oh no, please don't. But I love it how they set it up. They were on their app, they were texting, and Sam's like, hey, come on, let's just have a fucking drink and a laugh, you know.
I gotta reach out to Brad to set a man up. Come on.
I love that aspect. I loved Sam's whole story too, with just like with him in the restaurant and then the vandalism of that. And then that guy coming over saying, wanting him for the national team and then just basically blacklisting him. And there's so many aspects.
Yeah. And the jerseys, the tape on the jerseys.
The tape, I mean, that instantly brought to mind Rage Against the Machine at Lollapalooza 93 when they went on stage naked and they had PMRC across their chest. It was, it was like, hey, you know, we have something to say here. So they put Sam convinces the team you don't have to tape it out, and everybody joins him, and it's just this community around him.
Solidarity, just for one.
Yeah, and it was ethical, right? It's like sports athletes are millionaires, billionaires, but they are human and they have ethics as well. And the character of Sam just.
That goes with another theme that really I picked up on. Like, there was a scene in the locker room at one point where it was like, I forgot what it was, but it was like they were really sad, and he was like, what's worse? There's one thing that's worse than being sad, and that's being sad and alone. And the whole team together through the whole series, I mean, the connection that they have was amazing. And we need to remember that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's absolutely, man.
So much harder to be sad if you're sad and alone.
Yeah, no, and we've all been sad and we've all been alone, and together it's really, really rough.
And you can see that too with the whole thing with, I think it was in the beginning, it was season 2 or 3 with the whole, maybe it was season 2 beginning when Jamie Tart is acting all playboyish and then he gets released from the Manchester contract. And then all of a sudden it's just like, do we want to bring him back here now? Because he basically did the whole, almost not quite like the scene in Half Baked where the guy leaves and he's like, fuck you, you're cool, I'm out of here. But Jason Sudeikis realized it more on a personal level, what he needs more than anything other than, yes, there are people here that do not like him or want to play with him because of him being Jamie Tart, the asshole, but he still is a human. And that's the thing I think that Ted always kept seeing for people. I mean, obviously Rupert was just a complete dick and he wasn't going to see anything good with him anyway, but he just would always take the little bit of, the little bit of goodness that was showing through sometimes with anybody and said, here we go. Let's try to build on that. And then if nothing happens, then, well, we tried.
Yeah. Amen to that. And I feel like Ted Lasso, to me, kind of brought back memories of Joe Madden when he was first managing the Rays, because the Rays had went from worst to first, essentially, under Joe Madden. Not any experience as a major league manager. Obviously, Ted Lasso got hired for a different reason.
Yeah,
because Rebecca.
It was the major league aspect of it. She wanted him to tank it.
Yeah, didn't even. It's so much like Major League, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't thought of that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They've referenced that in the behind the scenes too, that it was kind of a major league, inspiration with that. But the fact that it just kind of completely backfired. For the best. Hey, I want to talk about this actress on the right here. Rebecca's mom. This is another thing I knew right away. And I do not know this actress by name, and I've only seen her in two things. I saw her in Ted Lasso, and I saw her as the nurse that took care of Chewbacca in...
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
And I was like, holy shit. Again, this is connecting me even that much more.
She had a memorable line when they were talking with Rebecca where they were talking about never going to give you up, and then she still didn't realize even to this day that Rick Astley wasn't black. She's like, he's not black? That was a big thing back in the 80s. They thought he was this big black guy, and there's this guy that looks like Howdy Doody singing this song. It's like, wait, who's this guy? That's not the guy.
That's hilarious. So the other Star Wars connection, right? There's another. You know that, Chris, right? The other Star Wars connection from Ted Lasso.
Yeah. There's probably about 5 or 6 of them. Which one you got?
I'm talking about like Jason Sudeikis was in The Mandalorian. He was like the scout.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He punched Grogu.
I remember that day where he was saying that his Twitter was blowing up because they were talking about Ted Lasso and stuff, and he goes, I don't know what the heck's going on. And then he's like, oh, they aired the, oh my God. Like he
was
didn't
the
realize
baby puncher.
And he's like, oh, I'm the guy that, he's like, I'm lucky I didn't get canceled that day.
That is funny. I did not know that. But there's a lot of Star Wars.
Oh my, yeah.
I mean, look at that fucking window
That
behind
is
Rupert.
perfect.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't notice that when I watched it.
The thing for me is Anthony Head was great. The only thing I've ever seen him in was he was the main guy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was a TV show, was the guy that trained Buffy. He was the librarian or the basically like her mentor type place. And then she comes into this and it was like, oh, wow. My God, he became such an ass. But that just shows how good of an actor he is.
Oh yeah, because I remember learning this when I first saw Darth Vader on screen. I said, well, I fucking hate that guy. And somebody was like, it's because it's a good character or it could be a good actor. Rupert was such an evil character. Yeah. Great actor, like you said, Brian. And if it wasn't for him being such a prick, I don't believe we would have seen Rebecca blossom into this powerful character that she had become. Man, the butterfly effect is so heavy.
I think if it wasn't for Ted, too, she was overcome by Ted's niceness.
Like, let's hire
every morning with the shortbread and stuff like that. Yeah. So even though she was just like, he kind of, the whole reason why he was there was sort of just like, okay, well, I'm going to prove you wrong by not being like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm just going to be like, hey, you brought me here for a reason. I'm going to do the job you brought me here to do, whether you like it or not, if it's going to backfire. But she just did it because she wanted to see the thing that her ex-husband loved the most, go up in flames. But then realizing it's so much better to be positive about it and be successful than it is to have this thing crumble, to look at your ex and go like, haha, see this? So
yeah.
Then when she spills the beans to him and tells him, this is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
he's just like, I forgive you.
Yeah.
And she's like, you what? And yeah.
I gotta say that
so good.
Every episode was great. I feel like season 3 was a change, but it was still really, really good. But this scene here, the funeral episode, to me, slapped me in the face twice because Ted Lasso is in a therapy session talking about his dad committing suicide, finally opening up. Meanwhile, Rebecca's at the funeral, and she is telling her mom how she was so mad at her dad because her dad cheated on her mom, but she was also mad at her mom for, staying with the dad.
For knowing, yeah.
There was, God, the element of love and hate and the element of marriage and divorce is it's done so realistically. And it's done so well. And it really shone through in this. But, God, I remember I don't like to cry in front of my wife when I'm watching TV because I fucking cry too much. And I remember watching this episode with her, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is going to be hard not to choke on my own tears during this episode. It was so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah.
Dave, to go back to a little bit of the history of this sport that you love so much, you had mentioned to me when we were chatting a week ago that it was called soccer at one point across the pond. Tell me a little bit about that and what happened.
Sure, yeah. So it's funny because I get to play both sides, right? I can take the piss out of my friends in England. I can take the piss out of my friends in America, right? So it's so definitely whenever I hear like a British people saying, "Oh, bloody Yanks call it like soccer. It's not soccer, it's football." It's like, well, you realise people in England used to call it soccer, right? Like what? So the official name of the sport initially was like association football, and basically they shortened that. So from association, that kind of became soccer as part of association. So rather than saying association football, it's soccer. So it was always called soccer in England until like the 1940s or 50s when it got kind of changed to football. So, so the fact like Americans call it soccer, that's actually what it used to be called in England like years ago. So if you ever have like an English person like me say, "Oh, fucking Yanks call it soccer," you say, well, that's actually what you used to call it, So
Yeah.
Well, like the 40s was right around the time when like American football, the NFL was like blowing up bigger. So that was sort of probably like, oh, hey, we're going to take this back and be like,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. The one thing, I don't want to be like the host here, but the one thing that we haven't talked about at all.
You're the co-host. You're the co-host.
The friggin' premise is like the the friggin' Diamond Dogs.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that they went and ends up being like the guys know, and especially too, Leslie was one of my favorite characters on the show, even though he was rarely used. When he would come in there and just be like, he felt so much a part of that group because it's like, these are the guys that are in charge. And it was all about just them dealing with their feelings, especially that first time when Roy was a coach, they do the thing and they close the windows and he's just like, fuck this, and just walks away. Like, I'm not going to deal with this. But then he learns that this is good for him to have other guys hear and talk about because it's a big stigma, guys can't talk about their feelings with other guys and stuff like that, because that makes them seem weak, where this show, I think, helpfully shows a lot that it's like, you're a person, you have to deal with this, because if you don't, it's going to end up eating you alive. And you need to you need the viewpoints, and a lot of times when you think you have an idea and a way to deal with it, and you get all these other aspects, then you go, okay, I could deal with this differently, and it's beneficial for you.
Yeah, it's like what Beard said about pain. He said something like pain is like carbon monoxide. When you tell the person that hurt you, it's a vent, but if you keep it inside, it's gonna poison you.
Yeah, for sure. Go back to Wesley. Wesley, he's the jazz guy.
He's the what?
Right? Wesley's the jazz. He's the stand-up bass guy. He's Rebecca's
Leslie Higgins.
Yeah.
Leslie Higgins. He's the director of football.
Yes, Higgins, the director of football.
Higgins.
So the character, and I want to hear from you guys. The character that I related to on this show was Ted Lasso with Roy Kent with Higgins. Higgins for his jazz and his normal family life.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Lasso for just the fact that he believes. He's always looking for silver lining. And, you know, the fact that his dad committed suicide, I connected with that. And Roy, I cannot tell you how many times I say the word fuck out loud a day.
Yeah.
Which one?
I sent you that.
So it's one of those things where it's like, man, character relation. I don't know. Dave, any character that you relate to on this show?
I guess, yeah, all of them. I guess there's not one in particular. I guess there's little aspects of everybody, you know, just like you're saying there. I mean, like Roy Kent with his anger. You know, sometimes I get angry, I get pissed off at work or something. Oh, fuck it, fuck that. It's nice to see. There's definitely like swearing in England is just part of the national kind of vocabulary. Unless when I first moved to America, I'd be sitting at work and like in Nashville, right? I'd be sitting there, oh fuck's sake, and people are like, what? You can't say that. Or say like the C word or something like that. People just say that over there. It's just like normal banter, you know. Don't worry about it. So it's good to see now, like a show like this where there's so much kind of swearing in it. I guess I kind of related to Roy a lot.
So you're saying that there's a lot more casual swearing in public,
Yeah.
overseas than there is here.
Yeah, you see, it's probably the same more in America now. You sit in the office and people are like swearing, oh, fuck this, fuck you.
I mean, Roy Kent was swearing in front of his niece, and that was on my New Year's resolution list this year. Not say fuck in front of my daughter. And
how you getting on?
Roy Kent is swearing in front of his niece.
When you broke that resolution on January 1st?
I think January 3rd I broke. Brian, any character that you specifically character relate to on the show?
Not in. There's some aspects of Coach Beard that sort of related to me. Just his like kind of iconic, sort of just being like you try to catch people off on out of left field sometimes, where you get them like whoa. But not quite as being like, you know, my God, that episode with the pants and the boyfriend and
is Liz what's his girlfriend's? Is it Jade?
Oh no, Jade, no, she's not. Talking about, oh my God, what happened? We broke up. We broke up. She's crazy. No, I think
I totally see you like Coach Beard for sure. Because he's kind of like the fun-loving sidekick. You know, that's always, you know, lightening things up. He's like, you know, Lasso's always bouncing off things off of him. And that's another thing I love about the chemistry is that everybody, especially the fucking coach of the team. What do you think about this? I mean, Nate got promoted from the towel boy or the ball boy, whatever the fuck he's called, all the way to managing the, you know, opposing team. And then what a great story when he comes back. I knew that was like the only predictable thing in the show. I knew he was going to come back.
No, the one thing I got kind of aggravated with was if there was always going to have a conversation that needed to be private, stop going into the cleat room, because always that one, the new guy was always there. And then they look and they're having this heartfelt conversation and he's always sitting there like rearranging the equipment or stuff. Like, check the room first, dude, because he starts getting involved with all this stuff because he's getting, you know, they're always going in there and thinking like, oh, this room's free. Nope. Guys is still sitting here always, you know, cleaning the stuff up.
It was not the safe place. And that was kind of like the joke that they've, you know, ran with 3 different times. Rich, character that you relate to specifically on this show?
I would say both Ted and Roy. Like, back in the day, like in my 20s, I was like, kind of like the guy who always like to be the center of attention and Mr. Positivity about everything, to the point where like one of my friends told me, it's like, just dude, stop trying to be the center of attention all the time. So I like mellowed down a little bit, and to the point where eventually I became like a Roy. Like, I was just like 10, 15 years ago, I was a grumpy bastard, big time. I've found the merging of the two together to be who I am today. So, yeah.
Hey, I want to
wait. Hold on. Speaking of characters, I think Dave will find this funny. I remember last year when they brought in that Zava character, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's based off of Zlatan Ibrahimovic," and I was like, "No, really?" Like when Sudeikis is like, he looks like him, he acts like him. He was basically just. His name was Zava. It was pretty much almost like Zlatan anyway. If you guys don't know, look up he was another guy too. When he came over to he played for LA Galaxy, I think too. And I remember what happened was LeBron James sent him one of his jerseys, and Zlatan signed it and sent it back to him. Because Abramovich is like, he's a huge international footballer. So when he came here, but in America, they were just like, okay. So if you ever know, he basically, he's a tall guy with the goatee and the hair pulled back in a ponytail, and that's exactly what Zava looked like. So like,
and I loved it because he retired. It's like there's no way they're gonna fucking be able to afford this guy. And I felt like they didn't really talk about the financial aspect of athletes enough in the show. That might be my only complaint. I was kind of waiting for that. And of course, with Zava, like, he's like, fuck it, I'm retiring. I'm like, they got the best player. And he goes out on top.
And that's another thing too. The way that the show ends, when they click over and you don't know about the result of the other match, and then it's just like they go back to the US and it's like he finished second that year. They didn't win. It's like, you know what? Okay, that's fine. Because it shows you don't always have to come on top, but he was successful though. And now he's coaching his kids team or whatever. It's back in, he's not doing the big stuff anymore, but he felt fulfilled and he did his job,
Yeah, I think that was kind of the cool thing about the stories. They never won it all. They never won it all.
They came close. I mean, they got relegated and then they got brought back. I mean, that's the thing, talking about financials. When you go in between the leagues, it's a big money difference, like huge. When you go to the Premier League, that was the one thing too. Like, so, I mean, Dave knows about Luton Town. This is a team that was playing in like way back. They were the team, I think, when Wrexham got relegated out of the league, they were the ones that jumped up, and now they've gone into they're this stadium that holds like 20,000 people at that, and they had to actually do all this upgrade in order for like the press to be able to get into the stadium, because they're playing against, every team plays in every other stadium in the Premier League. So you've got Liverpool and Arsenal and all these, and they're going to this stadium that looks like it's like a fairground stadium.
You have to walk through somebody's backyard to get through to the some.
You have to walk through someone's back. So the press, they're like, but now this team is, this club is gone from being like down at the bottom to getting Premier League money. They're one of the top 20 teams in England. So it shows you could do it, but it's just like the matter of the money that they, even if they're just here for next, I think they're sitting in like around 16th or 17th. So
they're probably going to go back down, but they get good TV money. But that's the thing, because the season interesting, right? Because the teams at the bottom are fighting for their life. Because here, if you have a crap season in the NFL, guess what? You get the first round draft pick, you get rewarded. Whereas in England, you get relegated, you go down to the league below and you lose a ton of money.
And I loved how Richmond did that after the one season. They got relegated, then they came back up, and then next year they went. It's sort of like the opposite of Leicester. What happened? They win the thing, and then like 10 years later, they're down and they're not even in the Premier League anymore.
So what do you guys think? Did Ted end up getting back together with his wife in the end or not?
No.
No. I think he went back with. I think. There was the one scene, I think, that was kind of telling about what the relationship is with his wife, when the wife and the son and the boyfriend were watching the match, and the boyfriend therapist makes some like quick comment about the soccer game, and the kid sort of rolls his eyes and looks like they pretty much dismiss him, like, okay, you don't understand this. So I think that she's not with the therapist anymore.
Yeah,
but he's not. They didn't get back together.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, it didn't show that they got back together. But then I was thinking, after, if he left, the therapist left, who knows?
No,
there were two quotes, and I'm paraphrasing here, that really, when they were said on the show, they really stuck with me. One was, "Don't let yesterday get in the way of today."
Yeah,
and the other one was, "Don't worry about shit that hasn't happened yet," because Ted was always he wanted to hire private investigator to find out if his wife was going to get married in Paris. And Michelle was watching some of this with me off and on, and she's like, well, what happened? Did she leave him? Did she cheat on him? I said, no, he left her. But there was also the third thing that stuck with me is getting past your exes, if you will, is something that, it takes time to overcome. And we obviously see that with Lasso. Hey, we are at the hour mark. We are winding the show down. We could talk about this for 2 more fucking hours, but we're going to save some for the Machtails Patreon-only podcast that you guys could be a part of. But before we go, David Gladding, I want you to translate a couple things for me, a couple words that we've heard on the show that are very common across the pond.
Man, I feel like I'm on the spot now.
So I want you to translate this in, I don't want to say English. I want to say Americana, if you
Bring
will.
it English to American.
English. I didn't say that. Man, I don't speak American. Okay, the word oi.
Uh-huh.
Oi. We heard that a lot. Oi. Is that O-I? O-I?
Yes, OI is kind of like trying to get somebody's attention. Like, let's say, you're walking down the street, you can't see, but oi, Chris, oi. It's kind of like,
It's like,
kind of
hey.
like, hey. It's kind of like, hey, yeah.
Yeah, okay, like, hey, okay. Now, they say cheers a lot. Usually, I don't like to say cheers unless I have a drink in my hand, but they just say it in the locker room. Hey, cheers, cheers,
Yeah, cheers is kind of like a good way, like bye or something, or kind of cheers, good luck. It could be multiple things. It's kind of like fuck. It's got a lot of different uses. Yeah.
Okay, what about wanker?
Yeah. So, this is a funny story. When I was a kid, I was probably like 6 or 7. I remember somebody at school saying wanker. I didn't know what it meant. I said to my dad, I said, Dad, what does wanker mean? And he says, you could see he was thinking about it. And looking back now, it's hilarious. But he said, that's just somebody who likes to play by themselves.
Because they use it so differently over there. Of course, when Ted Lasso took the field, they chanted wanker. But here it's like I wouldn't call you guys, hey, you masturbator. It's how that goes back from how many years? Centuries old, wanker?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm not sure where it first came from. Yeah, but it's kind of another word that can mean kind of like, oh, he's a good wanker, or like terrible. It's kind of like bollocks is a term that can be good or bad depending on the context, right?
Okay, so that's another word, but you say it could be good or bad. So
yes, you could say like, oh my god, that beer I just had, that's the bollocks. That means it's like really good. Or you could kind of say, oh, that's bollocks. It depends on how you're saying it and the kind of like the inflection in your voice.
It's like fuck. It's how you used it.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
inflection and yeah. Like fuck, this is good, or fuck, this tastes like shit.
Another one, twat. I remember to say twat, I think.
Yeah, so like I think you pronounce it twat, and that basically just means. I mean, I'm sure you know what that is, but that just means like if somebody's an asshole or something like that. But
no, would twat be the equivalent of the C word?
Kind of, but not as intense, I guess. It's a lighter version of the C word, I'd imagine. But that's kind of like, oh, you stupid twat, what are you doing,
There was something that I heard in the show a lot that I've only heard Jar Jar say, and of course, Rich Brendle, and it says it in our circle, boyo. Now, is this something that George Lucas took?
I think that originally comes from Wales, I think. Like people in Wales call each other, instead of like mate, they'd call each other like boyo, like, hey, how's it going, boyo? Or something like that. So maybe that's where it comes from. But that brings me a funny point too, because it's like that was one of the funniest bits when Ted is first there, because you know how you've got England, Wales, Scotland, United Kingdom, the British Isles, Great Britain. There's so many different kind of permutations, and he says something like, "How many countries are in this country?"
Oh yeah, yeah, Wales. How many countries are in this country? Yeah, God, I was watching an old Ted Lasso skit from when they were first introducing the character years ago, before the show even happened. And he actually, that's a line that they had as part of the skit so many years ago that they decided to run with that now. One word that you taught me, but for the listeners, pitch. We know it's a match, Brian. It's not the game. It's the pitch. It's the match. But the pitch, what is the pitch?
Pitch is the field. So it's like the grass field you play on is the pitch.
Grass field that you play in. Hey, we're learning a lot here. Okay.
There's also
Hey,
like it's not they don't wear jerseys. It's like it's a kit too.
Mhm.
So you put your kit on to play a match on the pitch.
Another one too on that theme too. So like you call them cleats, like the little bits on the bottom of your boots. Like in England, they're called studs.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're running low on time, but are we going to play the Shag, Marry, Disintegrate or not?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, okay. Brian, you're happily married. I'm going to let you off the hook for this. Dave, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Rich, I'm going to do Shag, Marry, Disintegrate, and with the lovely ladies of the show. So we have Juno Temple. I know Juno Temple, but her character name always slips me because her name is so prevalent.
Keely Jones.
Keely, and then Rebecca Waddingham, Miss Waddingham, and then Nate's girlfriend. Nate's girlfriend.
Yeah.
All right. So, Shag, Marry, Disintegrate. What? You wanna walk us through this, Rich?
This is an easy one. I would easily marry Rebecca. She's just the most beautiful woman in the world, and I would definitely shag Keely just because she's a wild one, and then I would kill Nate's girlfriend.
That is
Carbonite.
Probably one of the most complicated Shag, Marry, Carbonites you've ever done. Rich, I gotta have you do a cheer and a beer, man. You're on the show.
Yeah.
What do you got for us?
As Brian said in the beginning, let's cheers to all of us being curious, not judgmental.
Here.
Amen to that.
Cheers to that.
Ziggy zaggy.
Hey,
On that same note, I always think, and before this, I mean, Sudeikis I've seen him from movies, but I'll always remember him in the "What's Up with That" skit on Saturday Night Live as the guy that would do the Running Man in the back with the big afro. Like that's his one thing. They point to him, and he's just doing the Running Man, and then they go back and did the
What's up with that?
Yeah. I really think that closing statement would be, I think that because I was not familiar with Jason Sudeikis, it was a saving grace, I think, on my part, because I could see if you're a huge fan of his, you've seen him, you know him. He was so different as Ted Lasso. As I went back and I watched some clips of him doing other things, even when he talks during the press conferences promoting the show, he's a completely different character.
Yeah.
It's the mustache. That's what does it. Because he doesn't normally have a mustache.
And
they asked him about shaving the mustache, and he's like, "No, I didn't really have oh my God, I can't believe I'm getting out of character." The character development was amazing. All the actors and all the actresses was phenomenal. The chemistry was off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
And every single message found in this 3-season show, I just want more, and I'm hoping that there's going to be a spinoff show.
Yeah.
I don't know. It took them a long time to make this show, so I think they would do a spinoff show because I think I know the audience is there. I want to see.
They just did something recently where they were all there, and they were all pretty much like Rebecca's like, yeah, it's all basically we're 100% involved. Actually, no, we're 99% involved with it. We just need Jason. That's it. But it's also a matter of like, it's one of those things where it's like, do you go out here? Yes, people want more, but do you end at a point where it's like, it's the perfect point, and then you don't sully it. It's sort of like we're going back to Scrubs. The last season after Zach Braff left was like terrible.
Yeah.
Do that. So, I mean, I love the show. I'd love to see more, but you know what? You just keep rewatching the 3 seasons you have, and I don't know.
Exit better like George Costanza when he gets a good laugh. All right.
I'm done.
Brian, I think you make a great point, man. I mean, literally everything ends, right? Everything comes to an end, and Ted Lasso went out on top. Why would you try to fuck with that or try to change that? It would be a shame if something happened, an offside, a sideshow. Side story came and it was like, yeah, it was okay, but
it's better to burn out than to fade away.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Hey, I want to
I
thank
can't believe we
everybody.
didn't even talk about the Christmas episode.
We did it, but we're
That's a
gonna save
must
that for
every
the
Christmas
podcast.
to me. Every
There's a
Christmas
lot we
I'm
didn't
gonna
talk
watch
about.
that.
I mean, I was
There is
thinking
so
about just
much we
looking
didn't talk
through.
about.
Yeah.
I would love to have you guys back on the show, back on the podcast show, back on the live show. You guys have been here before. David, this is your first appearance on a Machtails live show.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So
Thanks for having me.
thank you for bringing some, how do I say this? Authenticity?
Yeah.
Anglo perspective was, I mean.
To our Americanized program here. Brother Rich Brendle, I always love having you on the show, man. Always love hearing from you. We'll have you on the podcast as we go down the long list of notes here.
Yeah.
Brian, I know you're available on Tuesdays because you are like Roy Kent. You're every fucking where. People can follow you on the source pages, and everything is under that one
Under source page. And I think the word you were thinking of was it validates you, because we have a show on source pages now called Timey Wimey Talk. It's a Doctor Who podcast.
Ooh.
And my friend Karen, who lives over in England, is on it. And so she, they get a lot more, plus it's, with it being a British staple, and it's almost like us, it would be sacrilege if we didn't have someone British on the show, because it's like, what are these Americans talking about this institution over there? But, yeah, just look up source pages on anywhere you get podcasts, and it's all in the same feed.
Yeah, for sure. And again, guys, tune in to Machtails on Patreon, please. I want to thank all my producers. I want to thank Matthew Rooney behind the board this evening. No idea what Ted Lasso was about, but now so I'm chiming in on some football-related comments. I know that he's probably going to find some time to watch the show, and he says, "Go Dodgers!" Yes, football. I almost said football season. Football season is over. Baseball season has begun. Hey, I want to thank you guys for watching and supporting the show. I am your host, Cris Macht. We will catch you next time on another episode of Machtails from the Cantina Live. So long, everybody.